Hi there, my name is Zarah and I would like to welcome you to my podcast. I'm an energy healer, mentor, and coach, helping people create more authenticity and intimacy in their lives so as to reach lasting well being and build meaningful, aligned relationships. I will be connecting with people of similar interests in the show and hope you will find lots of value in it. Thanks for listening. In this episode, relationship coach Morgan Goldberg and I share an intimate conversation about how she went from Judaism to Jesus via ayahuasca. Morgan and I met in a mastermind group where part of the work focused on healing our relationship to the divine masculine. She tells the story of how Christ appeared to her during the ceremony, which turned sour, as plant ceremonies sometimes do.
So good morning, Morgan. Thank you for joining me on this podcast.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to work together a couple times ever since we were in the mastermind, the training together. So you're a relationship coach and you work with energy, embodiment. You're also a former circus what do you call
Artist.
it? Artist,
Circus artist.
exactly,
Yeah.
artist. Yeah, so you have
Yeah.
such an amazing background. And I think today we're going to talk about something completely different. We've talked about sacred sexuality, about pain and pleasure. And today we're going to talk about something very personal. So thank you for being so open and sharing this kind of incredible story that I can't wait to hear about. But before we do that, I just wanted to make a confession.
Okay.
Since we're being very, very vulnerable today, I wanted to tell you, Morgan, that when we came on our first Zoom call together in our training, I I found you so beautiful. Like I was like,
Oh.
oh, who is this woman? And I couldn't stop staring at you. And I thought you were glowing and you just had this very warm energy that came through the screen. And so I just wanted to say that.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. I'm receiving
You're
that.
welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so welcome. So yeah, so you recently had a plant ceremony. When did this happen? A couple days ago?
Yeah, just last weekend.
Okay.
Like a little over a week ago. So
Okay, and
yeah.
then big shifts, right? Kind of culminating
Yeah.
work, months
Yeah.
of work. So please tell us
Yeah.
about that. Let's just dive right in.
Sure. Yeah. So in our work in our mastermind, we've been working with the Heroes Gamos
Yeah.
initiation. I'm going to call it that. Which so every day, and I'm sure you were doing this too.
Yeah.
I invoke the divine masculine,
Yes.
and that's what my meditation was. It was
Yes.
just divine masculine. Here I am. Let me feel you within me, yeah, and surrender, and like tell me what to do, be with me. And it was a really beautiful experience. And the fact that just as it was ending, I was going to this ceremony, and I was like, okay, my intention is to connect. It was just to connect with the divine masculine. Just
Wow, I love that.
I kept it simple. And actually there was another part of it, which was to discern the false light, because this is something that had been coming into my field a lot. And as far as, working with being a medium and working with other guides and angelic beings and just other energies besides like true source, God, Father God. And so I really was like, I need to get clear on this, because I don't want to be deceived,
Right.
I want to be able to discern what is the truth, and who is really beneficial, who is on my side. And so and so for the past about month, I had also been kind of coming back to this, well, I can always trust Jesus Christ as a God, as a guide, as like a just a shining light of truth of like, I can always, that's like the King of Kings of gods. But
so let me just ask you,
yeah.
sorry for interrupting, but you've
No, that's
already
okay.
been working with like Jesus. Yeah. Is that
So I was part of the
Christian?
Santo Daime church. I'm Jewish, and my parents are
Oh,
not.
oh
Yeah.
my, you're Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Jewish.
why I was like Goldberg. Yeah. So Christ
Yeah.
is not part of your culture, your heritage.
No, I was not raised with it
So
at
how
all.
did this, okay, when did
So
this
I,
begin?
so I was part of the Santo Daime church, which is,
Right.
if people don't know, it's a Catholicism, folk Catholicism mixed with Amazonian shamanism, and it's from Brazil. And so as part of that, and that is when I started really like having my mediumship open up. And so they work with Jesus and Mary and, you know, the Divine Mother and Father and stuff, but they also work with all these other beings, and they call on angels, and they
do they work with ayahuasca?
Yeah, it's
okay.
ayahuasca.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say, is that the main draw?
To go, for people to go there.
Would you say, or not necessarily?
Yeah. Okay. I would say most people who like, I mean, people are like, I think maybe some people who are like, were raised Christian, but then went into New Age, and then they're like, oh, plant medicine. And then they're like, oh, I can do plant medicine and come
Jesus,
back to and Jesus. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's probably a mix there, but I think most people who come to ayahuasca are searching for something. They're spiritual seekers, and they're searching, and they're like, I've heard that she might have the answer.
Yeah.
And, you know, she often does, if you're really, you know, if you really know what to look for. And that's a whole, and I'll get there eventually as far as like,
so when you say she, you're talking about,
I'm talking about ayahuasca.
Yeah. Just for in case people aren't familiar, like
yeah. So I had like some experiences with Jesus, just being this electrifying, like brightest light that I could ever, and so the difference between like the angel experiences I had, and then the Jesus experience was like, it was just Jesus was just so immense, and it was like I was inside like a chasm of his light in a sense, whereas like angels I could actually kind of like feel them and see them, and they would come over to me, and they would kind of like knock on my door, like, do you want to let me in, and you know, that kind of thing.
So this is what you experienced during ayahuasca ceremony.
In the Santo Daime church. And so I'd always like had a connection with Jesus, but I wasn't like, you know, it hadn't really like fully taken root in my heart that, you know, that was my path. And so when I went into this ceremony this weekend, I was not even thinking about Jesus. I mean, I had been a little bit for the past month, like, because it had been coming into my field from some people that I follow who had been really big in the new age new age coaching circles and stuff, and then had sort of come forward as like, we need to come back to Christ. Like, Christ is the true path to ascension. And so but it felt like a thorn in my side, because I was very much like, but I don't like, I'm not Christian, you know.
I'm Jewish.
but it was like still kind of like calling me in this way. And I was like, but when I went into the ceremony, it was really just about connecting with the divine masculine. So what ended up happening is I just fully like surrendered. I was like, okay, where are you? Like, divine, like, let me give it to me, you know? And I just felt Jesus Christ. And when I say feel, I was, you know, I'm so into embodiment, right? And it was very out of body. It was very like spirit level, you know? It was, and it wasn't like feel. It was like I saw, felt, knew, right? Like all of those things at once.
Like cognition.
Yeah. And it was like Jesus was there, and Jesus was the pathway to the masculine. And And I just felt like my whole, like I felt so much love. I just felt this like deep sense of being loved, being held in love, being this divine gift to Jesus and to God. And I was, and of course, you know, there's some sort of processing through all of this. So then I was like, well, you know, where's the Divine Mother? And then all of a sudden it was like all of these past lives of mine like flashed through. And like the one that I remember, I'm not that saying I was Joan of Arc, but it was like I all of a sudden was like connecting with all of these divine like incarnations of the feminine, but I was her.
You saw Joan of Arc?
I saw Joan of Arc.
Because she's been coming a lot like in my work.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I posted about her. Like,
yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. So it was like, I was the divine feminine. That was like the message. And that's with the Heroes Gamos. That's what we were working with, is like, we already are feminine essence beings. We already are divine. We know that. And so just being penetrated by God. And then I was just, it was like all the timelines just, like time sort of collapsed, and I just saw all of my lives sort of flashed before my eyes. And I was told that I was like I'm still like this feels a little bit too much, like it's too prideful, but like that I was basically like an incarnated angel, like here to bring forth the light and the torch of God. And then and so sorry, I lost my train of thought.
So I'm just curious about how you received all that. Was it a shock? Was it a surprise? Like,
I was in bliss. Like I was just like, oh my God, I finally know. And that's the crazy thing, is like, as spiritual seekers, we're always seeking, right? We're always trying to fix ourselves and heal ourselves and like find truth. And it was like, I was just so relieved and happy and grateful that like I finally knew. And then so during this whole time, I was completely making all this noise, which I didn't even really realize. Like I knew it was noise, but I didn't know it was loud. And so, so I was like laugh, scream, crying.
Oh my God.
Basically. Yeah. And so what that was in the journey was, I did, because I'm also a shadow integration like facilitator, like I did see all of these shadow patterns and wounding patterns sort of like just like being revealed in the similar way as my past lives were, like in kind of this
the suffering and the
and it was like a little like a screenshot, like I don't know how to explain it exactly, but
the scenes, a succession of scenes.
Exactly. Like and they were just like like going out, like, and it was like, okay, like that's all, like, so that was, I think, what was partly like being released through my voice.
And so you were just responding to it, like
I was just like and which is, you know, I always tell people like it's really important to let like trauma move through your body, and so that was basically what was happening. And so what happened then was that, and I was just like I was not tuned into the rest of the circle. I was just really in my own thing.
Was it a big circle?
It was like, no, small. It was like 9 people or something.
Okay, and that's actually big for me. And how many facilitators?
Just one.
Oh, yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, and we weren't helping. Like, there was no helping because we were like technically not helping because of COVID. And so we were supposed to like deal with our own purge buckets and stuff. And so since I was in a really good place, I was like, I don't need to worry about anything else. Like, I'm like doing my thing. I'm going really deep here, you know? Yeah. But then somebody came over and touched me.
So one of the participants, not the facilitator.
Well, she was the like helper if somebody needed help. And so I guess the facilitator had like nodded to her to get me to drink water. But like, like in the way that I work with ayahuasca, I don't drink water until like the very end of the ceremony. And that's something that's different circle to circle. And I guess he thought I needed water. I did not need anything. I did not want help. I did not need help. He came over and touched me. And they had also said at the beginning of the ceremony that we don't touch each other. Like, because that's an important ground rule.
So she violated that rule.
Yeah. And so they said that if you were going through a loud process, that it was better if you took it away from the circle, if it was like going on for a while. But I had I didn't know I was being as loud as I was. I mean, I honestly don't think that I was being as loud as what they thought. You know, that's the other part of it, is that I think that, and this is where actually I didn't share this part, but I saw also in this state of like, I am heaven, I am perfect, I am saved, I am one with God, I'm one, you know, Jesus is my guiding light, all of that. I also saw that there was like the devil. Like I saw all of the, you know, beyond my wounding coming out of me, like I saw in the field, in the mental field, I saw how like Lucifer is just like fighting really hard right now, especially because there's many people waking up and coming to the light, and you know, there's always been like evil in the world, and like the world is you know, it's not that people are evil, it's just that there is these forces of darkness that kind of get a hold of people. And so what I saw is that they didn't want me to go there because they were kind of in this false light matrix, which
so you saw that.
So it was like they were all like good and going like processing and healing and whatever, but they weren't like in this like complete surrender and alignment to God. And so she came over and touched me, and I said, don't touch me.
Yeah, for sure.
And then she was like, well, like, can you sit up and drink some water? And I tried to work with her, because I'm not like, you know, I wasn't. And then she was like, well, can you come with me over here? And I was like, I don't want to go with you, because her energy and like the fact that I was like, I'm not, and then I'm like, I'll go by myself. I tried to go by myself, and I couldn't. I stood up, but then when I tried to take a step, I was like, no, this is not happening. Like I'm just like here. And so I really saw how when somebody is in that place of vulnerability and openness and is going so deeply into the truth, into surrender, and other people just aren't there, and they're a little bit in their illusions and they're deceived, they can just be sort of manipulated by these forces that don't honor integrity, that don't honor like care and sovereignty and all of that, and that is why they kind of wanted me out of the circle like without knowing. But that was like, and I was like, in my head I was just like, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they've done, because I'm not like, I didn't want to blame them. It was just like I could very clearly see that it wasn't the magic or the spirits that they were working with, like, weren't pure, like divinely oriented.
Right.
And the only medicine circle that I trust is from my first teacher, who I really went deep with on the path, who was like, not everything is divinely oriented. And that's just a very simple way of saying, like, you just don't want to let whatever in, you know, you want to really be discerning. And that was, so I got my intention so much, like the discernment for being able to tell false light, and then the connection with God. It was just like, it was really beautiful, but it was also, I felt I was violated,
Yeah.
you know, and that's something that I feel like really needs to be brought more to the forefront of, especially working with medicine. And I know you work with medicine, so I'd love to hear like your thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's tricky. I've had ayahuasca twice, and I resonate more with other plants, to be honest. It's a bit intense for me, like physically, and and also, I think it's important to find the right group that doesn't have agenda based in the ego. Not that I'm saying about my facilitators at all, but yeah, we're all working with so many different energies that it can get confusing. It can get confusing.
And that is a lot of like that spiritual ego thing, I think is a lot of like, is a trap, and it's like a very easy way to see if somebody is kind of deceived by false light, as if they're sort of thinking like they know, I mean, like they're just in this place where they're like putting themselves on a pedestal around,
like it's about them having a successful ceremony,
right? Or like they can heal you, you know, and as mentors and coaches, it's like we know that we don't heal other people. Like we can be guides, and we can be you know, hold the torch for other people, and we can ask a lot of questions to get people to be curious about, you know, their shadows, and I mean there's so much we can offer, but we don't actually like everybody has to do their own healing.
And just to your point about the touching, I think this is also important, even without talking about plant medicine, even just talking about energetics. If somebody, if we're having a healing circle and somebody starts to cry, right? So oftentimes someone will reach out and start to hug them or comfort them or hold them. And I always feel like, no, they need to, you cannot abort the process. Like, please let them release. Like, what if they have more tears to, you know, that like it's something beautiful is happening, right? You're touching something sacred, and then somebody's gonna come to comfort it because they're not comfortable witnessing the unfolding of, you know, that's like, no. It's not about you. It's not like stay in your seat. Actually, this happened Sunday. I was holding space, so very small. That's why like 9 for me is a lot. Like 3 people. I was holding space for 3 people, and during the share part, after everyone's back, one of the participants was crying, and then, you know, someone else came to hug her, and I didn't say anything, but you know, it's something I don't do even after we were back, because I feel like, you know, we can hug after or whatever, like not during the process. Not
totally. I mean, so much of what you shared, it's like that sovereignty and that realizing that whatever's coming up for you, you just have no idea what they're going through. And if you're triggered by it, then that's something for you to look at within yourself. And people just often will jump to that the easiest, or like the most pattern, the thing that's most ingrained, which is to try to like fix somebody else. And you have no idea want to be fixed.
If it's too early to to intervene. I think,
and then the other thing that you were mentioning too is just like that, or that came up for me, is just having that integrity around your word, and so that you're actually like before the ceremony, you're very clear on what is expected, and that you actually follow through with that, you know, because I realized if they had said, okay, well, if you're going through a loud process, we want you to take it away, and if you are unable to, we are going to escort you out, if that was
holding you.
yeah, like if I knew that,
Yeah.
like if they had said that beforehand, then I probably would have gone with her,
It
because
would
I
have
would
been
have
less threatening. Yeah.
it would, yeah, I would have understood that that's the way that they
Yeah.
wanted to hold their space. And that's why just having like impeccability with your word, with your
Oh my
care, with
gosh.
setting the container, and
So
then
important.
following through with it. It's like, it's so important. And it's often, there's often like that gray area, which it's like, especially with medicine ceremonies, you just can't, it's just not healthy for people.
It's so delicate.
It's so
on the other hand, when ceremonies go wrong, are wrong, like when they go a little bit, off the expected scenario, there's also a message there, like, I believe, like it happens for a reason.
Yeah, no, totally.
When all hell breaks loose.
And so for me, it was about like, no, like you can have firm boundaries, right? Like you can claim your sovereignty, you can have firm boundaries, and that's the masculine energy, which is, like,
it's
yes or no.
So
like
challenging when you're doing that while you're journeying, because you're pretty much not in your body anyway. So it's like you have to defend your body, but you're not even present. So it's like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
Like, not fair, not fair.
But I realized how far I'd come. That was the learning experience for me.
And also if and when you hold space, you can be so intentional with that.
Exactly.
So impeccable. Yeah.
And then just getting this information out there to people, because if people are interested in plant ceremony, the things that I would look for are like the teacher that I trust. He gets on the phone with new people for like an hour before they come.
I love that. Makes sense.
And then when we set intentions, he will guide people to say the intention clearly.
Oh, I love that.
So people will be like, oh, like I want to experience, and he'll be like, no, what, this is what I'm hearing. Like say it directly, and so he'll guide people to say the intentions clearly, and he'll have people sit with their intentions for like a week before.
Oh, beautiful.
And then afterwards, integration with like we would do integration after each every morning, and then we would get on a call like a week later and do another integration call. And that's something
proper care.
Proper care, and it's really lacking. And so those are the kind of things that I would look at, because like this ceremony that I was at, no integration circle, and I left. So I was supposed to stay for 2 nights, and I got what I found what I was looking for, and I went and I talked to each person, and I told them my experience so that they would know that it was my trust was violated. And so, but there was no, like, it was an opportunity for way more healing if we had all sat around and intentionally did a sharing circle. There would have been much more opportunity for healing than for me to just kind of talk to them and be like, I'm leaving. And that's, my one teacher who I do trust, he says, integration circles are like where the real work and healing is done. Yeah. So if they're not doing that, then it's like
a red flag. Yeah.
It's a red flag. Yeah.
Totally. I mean,
Go ahead.
We talked about this before, that the work happens between the ceremonies, and there are a lot of people who are just addicted to the ceremony or to the medicine, and then they bypass they don't apply it in their physical life, so they get stuck in that space where they have no sovereignty in the physical realm, and
because it's just like
a trap. It's a trap.
And they're going to the medicine to try to fill their God-shaped hole, and then it's not always, and then it's just like trying over and over again when yeah, they need to learn to do that in their everyday life, and really like
That's why
dedicate
for
themselves.
me, these all these tools are complementary, right? Like it's nice that you have a meditation practice or an embodiment practice to anchor between the ceremonies. I mean, imagine you go there with zero, practice, or
And
it's
a
really
lot
gonna
of
fuck you
people
up. And a
do.
lot of people
Yeah.
do
And,
because you're like,
and a
oh, this
lot of
sounds
people
so cool,
do.
and you're gonna this
Yeah.
and that, and then
Yeah.
they're
Or
not.
they're like really depressed and they're
Yeah,
desperate,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
and it's like, and I can see how it could make things worse, or
It does
yeah,
sometimes,
it does
for
sometimes. I've
sure.
heard of
Yeah.
I've heard of stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wow, that's really really great that you're sharing this. The importance of setting the intention way ahead, doing your due diligence with the facilitators, all the
Mhm.
integration, and I want to say, yeah, it goes for plant medicine, but even with other stuff like other tools, because you can go far with
Yeah.
other tools as well.
Yeah. And it's this thing of like, all of the tools, there's nothing wrong with any of the tools, but as long as we're always seeking, always trying to get something out of something on the external, and we're not turning inward to our direct connection to God, like it's just like a hamster wheel, you're just constantly going to be like, my friend that I did a live with the other day was saying, it's like you like get the trauma out of this side, and then like now the trauma's in this chakra, and now the
It's
next
like
the
trauma juggling.
yeah, and you're just like moving it all around. And I thought that was actually really poignant, because he said something that's missing from that, because it's not like that work isn't needed, but something that's missing from that is filling yourself up with God, filling yourself up with the light of Christ, if and that
Because
might not
when
be
you
everybody's
release,
thing, but
yeah.
but like at least just your really anchoring into your connection with the divine, and knowing that you're whole and complete already. And that's something that's so missing in the personal development world. And it's funny even to say that like as a coach, where it's like, no, we're selling that like you can do the work to heal yourself if you really, but really like it's more of just like a surrendering and a remembering, and the actions that you take from that place of connection with the divine, and like
of the
listening.
insight.
Really listening to God, or to the
So have you always used that word God?
And no, not really. Like I would usually be drawn to using the word God, but then I would kind of want to like appease like other people, and so I'd say like God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And what I really realized though is that like that's another way that we're not having impeccability with our word, because like the universe, like in this, me seeing kind of the matrix of illusion and seeing things as more dual, right? Like, yes, God is love, but God isn't everything. There are like negative forces, there are demonic forces, there are like things that we don't want to embody, that we don't want to learn from, like that. I mean, and you can still learn from, it's more just like we need to have like judgment around like
discernment.
What is judgment and discernment. And so by saying like, well, the universe is bringing me that, you're opening yourself up to so many different, to any kind of spirit, you're opening yourself up to everything. And so knowing that there's a difference between God and the universe, I think that's an important distinction. And so now I definitely do use the word God with a capital G.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
totally on board with being impeccable with your word. It's something that
Mhm.
I kind of preach a lot
Yeah.
because people don't realize that words have
Hmm.
power, that words have energy, and they kind of toss them around. And I was, of course, for many, many years in that state where I would just not be mindful of my words. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, talking. So, so they would just come out. And sometimes,
Right.
like, they would come up before I have a chance to review them. So, so now
Yeah.
I'm much more mindful, and
Mhm.
it has served me well, definitely served me well. So I just want to talk a little bit about how you find this is going to impact your work going forward, right? So since you're a coach, and
Yeah.
how do you feel this is going to impact your work?
Yeah. I mean,
Or are you still
it's funny.
processing?
I am still
I
processing.
can tell.
So,
We
so
don't have to talk about this.
no, we can talk about it a little bit. So like because I'm a shadow integration
Yes,
specialist. That's
yes.
something that
Oh,
I
I love
do a
that too.
lot with my
Me too.
clients.
Yeah,
And yeah. And
yeah.
so it's funny because if you know, like if I believe now, I believe that Jesus like died for our sins. I mean, this is whatever hard to maybe stomach for some people, but like if you think of it like you're always forgiven in the light of God, and like Jesus is a pathway to salvation, then why do you need to like look at all your shadows? Like can't you just pray to Jesus? And
Wow.
like I was starting to have all of these things, but how I'm integrating
That's
it is
big.
like, yeah. so
That's big.
yeah, I know. So how I'm integrating it though is that like shadow work still is so important, because if you're acting from these wounds and these shadows and you're just caught up in this like matrix of like just confusion or
Addiction.
like addiction, or um not knowing like who the voice of God is, right? Like who your highest self is, what is most beneficial for you, like that all those discerning things that need to happen. Shadow work still is a really good path for that. And I think that too, like with like mindfulness is the first step, right? You notice the negative things, and then you're
The good
like
and the bad.
and you bring the light of awareness to like to all of it, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
bring
yeah.
And so that's the first step, but then it's like, okay, this bad thing, I keep noticing
Unwanted
it
thing,
over
yeah.
and over again. Or
Yeah.
like this thing
The
that's like
pattern,
not
yeah.
serving me. This thing that's not serving me is like, or serving God, or serving the highest humanity. Is just like, it's like noticing isn't enough, because you're just like, it could just keep happening over and over again. And so the thing with shadow work is you start a dialogue with that thing, and you figure out, like the post that you just did, of like, well, what are you really afraid of? What is at the core of this? What is at the root of this? And you realize you're afraid of death. You're afraid of being abandoned. You're afraid of what other people think. You're afraid of,
Are you talking about the fairy tale?
yeah, your
Okay,
fairy tale.
you just read that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
scary. I mean,
And
we can talk
it's
about it on an intellectual level, but then when you're in it, it's
when you're
like
in it.
something else.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's like when you actually invite that pain
Yeah.
or fear or
Or sit
anxiety
with
or
it.
whatever it is, and
Yeah.
invite it fully in, and you have a dialogue with it,
Yeah.
then that way you can judge
Yeah,
if
it
it's
is shadow
really
work. Oh, I
trying
didn't
to
even think of
protect
that. It is
you.
shadow work. Yeah,
Yeah. Is it really
yeah.
trying to protect you? Is it really
Yeah.
trying to, where does it come from? Like, where does that pattern originate from your childhood? Because they normally always start in your childhood. And then you can bring love and compassion to it. And if I'm working with somebody who's Christian, I would say, give it up to Jesus, give it up to God. If I'm working with somebody who's not Christian, I'll just say, like, bring forgive yourself, like bring compassion to that part of you. Yeah. Bring love to that part of you, because that's all it wants, right? Is love and attention. And so that's where I'm at, is that the work is still needed. And then, you know, the thing that comes out of that too is like, and now what do you do? What do you do? And once you get in touch with those parts of you that are in your subconscious, that are running the show in a way that isn't beneficial, and you give them a voice and you give them love, then they usually give you some kind of wisdom for like how to act. And they also, by giving them love, they are transmuted. I think that was some of the words that you
Yes.
used, and you're able to actually, they're not in the way of your communication to God or your higher self.
And you can move out of that pattern, out of that loop.
Yeah, exactly.
It's why we do. It's why we want to.
Yeah. And you can. And so as far as like moving forward, my work and the relational stuff, of course, too, because it's all reflected in our relationships. And what did Jesus teach? You know, to love another like you would yourself. And so we need to learn how to love ourselves, to love others. And so all of the work really, it doesn't really have to change that much, is what I'm realizing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great. You know, so recently, it's funny that you have a Jewish heritage, and then now you're working with Jesus, or you're surrendered to Jesus. And I'm from a very Catholic upbringing, and recently I've been spending a lot of time in the Jewish house here.
Oh, funny.
One of my good friends took over the rabbi's position because he's stuck in Israel. And I didn't know anything about Jewish mysticism or any of that. And it's just been mind blowing. Like, and I'm realizing how even the Bible, there's so many, I didn't realize there's so many levels to it, actually. So depending on where you are on your journey, you're going to get a different message. And it's really quite extraordinary. You know, obviously Judaism and Christianity are closely linked.
And they are. I mean, and another thing that I'm working on integrating is just like, anybody who's a spiritual seeker, who believes in a higher power, like you said, do you use the word the universe? Like, no, but like I would say source or the creator, like those are more aligned. Like basically, like when I say God, it is the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and Jesus and us. Like we are God. Like true communion with God is knowing yourself as God. And then as far as Jesus, like Jesus was God in the flesh, or that's what I believe. And so again, no different, you know, it's like it's still just like we're all pieces of God, and that's what we have to remember. And Jesus is a path to it. But, you know, like I said in one of my posts recently, like, I don't think that there is no truth in other paths. There's so many mystics from throughout the ages who have connected with God in a very pure and direct way. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for that was a lot for all your insights.
Yeah.
No, I mean it was amazing to hear your journey, your last plant ceremony, and thank you so much for sharing that. You have a website, Morgan, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way? I know you're on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, I'm just Morgan Goldberg on Facebook. I am Morgan Goldberg on Instagram, and my website is bodyofpeace.net, but it is quite outdated.
Okay, so it's better to go to social media.
There. Yeah. Better to go to social media.
Got it. All right. Well, thanks again, and you know, we'll be talking very, very soon. Keeping in touch.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, Morgan.
Okay. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Feel free to contact me through my website, www.zarahwindy.com, for questions or comments or even inquiries about my one-on-one coaching services and mentorship. I will personally reply to you. See you next week.